So for the class today, we're going to be having it on the Dubuque City Grants and Loans. And this is going to be worth 1 hour of Iowa CE credit. You are required to have your camera on and be in front of the camera to receive that CE credit. I do want to bring up one thing. I have noticed in the past that some people have actually been driving during CE classes. And unfortunately, if I do see that happening, you will not receive CE credit if you're driving. So I actually probably will remove you from the class because it's just not a safe thing to do, to be watching the class and driving at the same time. So that is one thing that I will be enforcing today during the class. If I notice it, or if you do notice someone else, you can let me know and I will take care of that. So for our presenters for today, we have Angela Ventris, and she is the Grants Project Manager for the Lead and Healthy Homes Program with the City of Dubuque, and she has held that position since January 2022. We also have Nicole Lytle, and Nicole's been working with the Housing Department for a little over a year and has been a project manager for the Older Adults Home Modification Program and the Healthy Homes Program for 10 months. And then I also have Maddie Haverland, that'll be a presenter. And Maddie has worked for the City of Dubuque Housing Department for over 10 years, holding several different positions. Currently, she is the Urban Development and Housing Rehabilitation Project Manager in the Housing Department. So our first presenter today is going to be Angela. So Angela, if you want to take it away.
All right, I've got to share my screen and get my PowerPoint up here. So give me 1 second. Goes extra slow and I have to change things all the time. There we go. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Thanks for having us. We were excited to be able to share the many different opportunities that we have for folks in Dubuque. I'm going to be talking specifically about our Lead and Healthy Homes program, not to be confused with what Nicole is going to talk about later, which is our Healthy Homes program. There's two pools of money, and sometimes they get lumped together and sometimes they are separated, and we happen to have both options. So we'll try and make it not too confusing for you and give you a little bit of a taste of all the things that we offer. So like I said, I'll be talking about lead and myself, and then we have another grant manager who manage currently the 2 grants that we have for Lead and Healthy Homes right now. From the perspective of somebody applying for our grants, it doesn't matter at all that there are 2, but we do have 2 managers who are working on it. Just a little bit of background in case any of you haven't heard. Lead was in paint for quite a while, and there were a lot of reasons that it was added to paint, including it made the paint look brighter, it was durable, it inhibited mold growth. And even though, you know, honestly, at the time they knew lead wasn't good for us, but they still did it anyway. And finally, in 1978, they had regulations that made it so that we couldn't use lead paint in residential. But now we're dealing with the consequences of old lead paint. Although it was durable, it can only last so long. And now a lot of paint, especially in older homes, like what we have a lot of in Dubuque, have chipping and peeling and deteriorated lead paint. So you can see if any of you have sold an older home and have seen the paint alligator chipping, like I have in the example here. It doesn't always look like this, but that is a key indicator that a home may have lead paint in it. Especially around impact areas, like where windows may be rubbing or hitting the windowsill, or as you see in the other picture, around a door handle or a door jamb. As I mentioned, it's not always the alligator type peeling and chipping. The wood siding, shingle siding here, that was lead paint, although it doesn't exactly look like what we would think of with traditional lead paint. And it's not always just in paint. They also used it in varnishes. And so you can see the photo on the right, we actually redid the flooring in this home because the original varnish that was on the floor had lead in it. So that's just to give you an idea of the different types of things that could have lead-based paint, and where, as you are looking at a home and working with a seller, they may want to think about that, or as a buyer of a home, they may want to look into it more if they think they may have lead paint in the home. Now, you might be thinking, well, what are the dangers? And it's especially dangerous for a child's health, specifically children under 6 who are developing. Adults, we don't put things in our mouths that we picked up off the floor, but kids do, and they can ingest minute particles of the lead paint dust that way. And as I mentioned, homes built prior to 1978 are more likely to have lead in them. And specifically, it was in the use the most in the 20s. So you can think about, as you are looking at selling homes, what age range they might be in and what might be a little bit of the likelihood that they have lead paint. And the reason that we want to help mitigate any lead hazards is because there are long-term consequences for children that have lead poisoning. There can be damage to their brains and their nervous system. It can slow development. And we do have children who come back as testing for having lead poisoning above well, there really is no amount of lead that you want to have in your system, but significantly high levels of lead poisoning have been seen here even this past year. So we don't want to see that, because we want our children to have the best probable outcomes. And so anytime we can take care of lead and keep it away from our kids, the better. So you've seen a little bit about what types of things might have lead paint on them. You've identified that there may be lead paint. A seller may have recognized that there's lead paint, or somebody who's interested in purchasing a home may wonder if there's lead paint. There are things that can be done, whether you actually go through our programs or not. So I want all of you to be aware so that you have a little bit of knowledge about what homeowners can do. First, eating regular balanced meals is a great way to make sure that your body doesn't ingest lead. That has nothing to do with fixing anything in the home, and is within everyone's control to a certain extent to be able to do. You can see the food here is rich in vitamins and minerals that help our bodies absorb all good minerals instead of absorbing lead. Kids who have full bellies are less likely to absorb the lead that they might ingest. So even if they are eating lead by putting their hands in their mouths and things like that, they're less likely to be harmed by it if they have a lot of good balanced meals. Another thing that can be done is pretending this guy supervises all your cleaning routines. It's called white glove clean. He's snooty, he's snobby, and no speck of dust gets past him. So if you think of taking a white glove and swiping it along a windowsill, that glove comes back clean. That's a really good indicator that there's not going to be enough lead dust to have a significant impact. That can also mean cleaning toys, washing hands before eating. All of those things help make sure that the lead dust isn't transferred from the windowsill, for instance, into mouths of kids or adults. Another thing, if you have folks who are interested in purchasing and they're talking about renovating after they or remodeling after they purchase a home, encourage folks to hire properly trained professionals. It's an easy question to ask. What are your lead containment techniques that you're going to use while working on this home? And if the person has no idea and says, I don't know what to do about lead paint, that can be a red flag. So just asking the question about how a contractor or how anyone who's working on your home will help protect those people living in the home from the lead paint that they may disturb is key. So asking the question of, how will you keep my family safe as you're doing this construction work? A lot of families do renovations on their own as well. There are a lot of great resources out there in understanding what to do and what not to do. The Iowa Department of Public Health has a lot of information on how to do lead safe practices as you're renovating your home as well. And funny enough, there's actually, I somehow managed to get on the lead paint removal side of TikTok. So there's a lot of TikTokers who are actually doing the correct methods for removing lead paint as they go through and remodel old homes. So it's been very interesting and good to see people caring about this. Another thing you could do is recommend that folks apply to be a part of our Lead and Healthy Homes grant. We have funding from now through 2025 or until the funding is exhausted. We do have some requirements. We do have to find lead at the location. We go through and do a full inspection, and we have a certain amount of funding. So we have about just under $20,000 to help take care of lead issues. And then we also have another pool of money for healthy homes costs, which help round out, say, all but one window happens to have lead, but the last window doesn't have lead. So we have a little pool of money that we can help replace, for instance, all the windows potentially in a home. And you can see here an example of a high impact project that we were able to do, fixing up some lead siding that was in a home in Dubuque. Now, not everybody is going to qualify for a grant, but in our office, we still help folks who have some questions about lead paint. So we can offer assistance if folks have questions about what correct containment might be or personal protective equipment they might want to get in order to do work on their own home as well. So we're always a resource for that too. A lot of the things that I said that we do windows, walls, baseboards, trim, doors. We don't do everything. So if all 4 walls have lead paint, we only help fix the walls that might have deteriorated paint. So chips, cracks, things like that. So our program can't do whole home renovations, but we can help take care of some of those lead hazards. We do have eligibility requirements. We offer this program for both rental and owner occupied units. Properties have to be in the city of Dubuque, built before 1978. And there are a little bit of differences between rental and owner occupied. Owners must have a child 5 and under living or visiting. For landlords, the property, you must provide preference to families with kids 5 and under when taking new applicants. And for owner occupied, we use the owner's income to qualify them. And for rental property, we use the tenant's income to qualify. Nicole is going to talk about the Healthy Homes program. And then we do have the income limits, which are the same for both of our programs as well. So Nicole, if you're ready, I'll stop sharing my screen and you can bring the same thing up with you so you can control it.
Sounds good.
Oh, so Angela, I did have one question for you.
Sure.
From the chat box, and it was, how do you check the lead and varnish?
Yeah, excellent question. So we have a what's called an XRF gun, and it's essentially a gun that shoots radioactive material through whatever surface we're trying to test. And that measures the amount of lead found in each of the surfaces that we're testing. So we're using radioactive material to test another dangerous substance, but it isn't hazardous to the home itself. It's self-contained and it's contained by lead itself. So that measures the amount of lead in each surface that we're testing. In addition to that, we also do dust wipe testing, which gets sent off to a lab. So we test the actual surfaces, and then we also test the dust that's in the home as well.
And then also, do you have the income limits for the programs that you were talking about?
Yeah, at the end of Nicole's slides, she's got the income limits, and they're the same for our programs. So we're only showing them once to save time.
Wonderful. Thanks, Angela.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so like Angela said, I'm Nicole Lytle. I am the grants manager for the Healthy Homes program. So I will be discussing that a little bit today. And so the Healthy Homes program, for this program, it primarily focuses not so much on the lead. And so we actually do go into the home, and for the home inspection, we go through a 28 housing hazard checklist. We do all of these housing hazards do fall underneath the main 8 principles of keeping your home healthy. And so these are the main 8 that they would all fall underneath. Keeping it thermally controlled can be anything from helping insulate around the windows, replacing some windows, keeping it dry if we need to install vent fans in the bathrooms, anything like that. And so we do have a wide variety of options of things that we can cover with this grant, where we are able to really focus in more so individually on this home that we are at. And so one item that we really put a lot of focus in on with our programs is radon. Now, we do require that each property that we enroll and inspect, they have to have a professional radon test completed. This would happen even if the property already has a radon mitigation system, and that's to double check and make sure that it is working properly. Now, radon, it is a radioactive gas. I'm sure you've heard of it. It is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. So if you don't get your home properly tested, you are completely unaware that it's there. Now, why is it important? Well, for us here, according to the Iowa Department of Public Health, it is the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. And so for the state of Iowa alone, it is responsible for around 400 deaths a year. And so that makes it very worrisome. And what makes it even more worrisome is that in nearly 5 out of 7 homes in Iowa, they have the radon levels above the EPA action levels, which is for, and I can't ever say this word right, I think it's picocuries per liter. And so our programs, if we find that it has the radon levels above the action levels that are required, we are going to install a mitigation system, and that is one of the main requirements. And so that way we can allow it to be safer for these families to live in. Some of the other stuff that we really focus in on is the asthmas and allergies we have in homes. We've removed old carpeting and replaced it with easily cleaning surfaces. So like LVP, we do repair plumbing leaks, replace water damage and moldy materials. And we have done some repairing or replacing gutters to redirect water runoff. We've actually gone to a lot of homes and see that there's not smoke detectors. So we do install a lot of smoke detectors. And then also repairing cracked and worn stairs. Sidewalks is a big improvement that we have touched on in removing those tripping hazards. Then lastly, like I said, increasing or installing fans to increase air circulation, and then exhaust fans in the home just to keep it, the moisture and the allergens levels lower. So this grant, we do have this grant. It started, well, we've had it for a little while now, but it does end in October of 2025. We have up to $10,000 per home or apartment unit that we are able to spend per one. So we can cover a significant amount of stuff with that $10,000. And so much like Angela's lead program, we do have our eligibility requirements. Ours are a little less stringent. We only require that they are within the Dubuque city limits. It can be a homeowner and it can be a rental property. And they have to be under the 80% median income level, which we will cover here shortly. And so that's our Healthy Homes program. We also have an older adult home modification program that I also run. This program, I won't go into too much detail on because it's for older adults. It could be helpful if you do find a client that's looking to downsize or maybe need some modifications in their new home. Maybe they recently downsized to something smaller, but still need additional modifications. So for this one, it is designed to assist homeowners who are age 62 and older to make their home safer to live in so that they can continue to stay there for a longer period of time. Some of the major ones that we've been seeing is the tub cutouts. And so we've been able to install these at a very pretty costly manner. It's pretty easy to get those installed and it's usually done within one day. And then installing comfort height toilets, grab bars in the showers by toilets, entrances, steps, addressing tripping hazards. And one that we've really focused in on too a lot is installing large house numbers. So if there is an emergency, the emergency personnel are able to find the property easily. And so we've seen a lot of cursive housing numbers that we've been able to replace with ones that are much easier to read. Now this grant, we have this until December of 2024. We have up to $5,000 per home to spend on this grant. So we have partnered with Unified Therapy and Four Mounds. So Unified Therapy does the home assessments with the clients and determines what work would be best for them using their occupational therapists. And then Four Mounds uses their educational program to teach students how to do contracting work, what to do the actual work itself on them. And so this one, again, it's pretty simple to qualify. You do have to be a homeowner. We are not able to do any rentals. And you have to be 62 or older. And you must be under that 80% median income level. And so those income levels are shown here. They're pretty decent incomes. Again, I don't know if Angela said this or not, but a rental property, we actually use the tenant's income to qualify for the programs, not the landlords. And so I mean, not very often do we find, especially in the older adults program, that people aren't able to qualify. And so it's pretty across the board, pretty simple as long as they're underneath these numbers. And then so our timelines for our grants, because they are federal money, they can take a significant time. So for the older adults program, usually within 2 to 6 months after they apply, they have the work completed. For Healthy Homes, it's more like 3 months to a year. And then for lead and Healthy Homes, it's also around that 3 months to a year. And that's basically based on the windows. We do a lot of window replacements with both Healthy Homes and the lead program. So wood windows, if they are considered historic, take longer, but the vinyl windows we're able to accomplish pretty quickly. So that is all that I have, but I will hand it over to Maddie. She will be talking about our rehab program and our first time home buyers program.
So Nicole, before you
Yes.
leave, I have 2 questions on the chat box. Would that elderly program, would that be available to elderly people that live with relatives?
They do have to be on the mortgage. And so if we pull it up in Beacon, they do have to have their name on there. They don't have to be the only owner, but they do have to be part ownership of that property.
And then is there a program available in like Dubuque County, Dyersville, Farley, or is that just strictly City of Dubuque?
Yeah, great question. So we do actually, we work with ECIA, Angela Eastern, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they do have all the same grants as we do. And so they cover the county. So we cover everything within the city limits and they cover everything outside of city limits.
Great. And then also, I did have a request to see the income level slide again, but I'm thinking you guys already switched PowerPoints to Maddie's already, or are you still on yours?
We did, but
But if you guys want, what we could do is if you're able to send me your PowerPoints, I could just forward them out to all the attendees. So then everyone has the information. We could maybe do that
Perfect.
instead. Okay, wonderful. That's all I had from the chat box. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie Hamerland. I am the Urban Development and Housing Rehab Project Manager with the City of Dubuque. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today, like Nicole mentioned, about our homeowner rehab and home buyer incentive programs that we have here at the Housing Department. But I'm also going to give you kind of an overview of the other community development programs we have, because many of the things we do tie into larger initiatives or have some overlap with other housing and equity issues. So we'll look at a little bit of that today as well. So the first thing I want to hit on is something that many of you have probably heard of, but it has the buzz around it, no pun intended, has sort of died down a little since the closeout of the biggest pieces of this program. It's the Bee Branch Watershed Flood Mitigation Project. So there were 6 presidential disaster declarations between 1999 and 2011 related to heavy rainfall events and flooding, and the damages from all of those was estimated to reach around $70 million. So this project was a multi-phase project focusing on the things listed there, the detention basins, the daylighting the creek, storm sewer capacity improvements, et cetera. And it ended up being over a $200 million investment to mitigate the flooding in the area. So the cities received also some federal and state grants to offset a portion of these costs. And one of the things that went along with this was a Healthy Homes program, similar to Nicole's, that focused on making homes more resilient to heavy rain and flood events. So this program, the Bee Branch Healthy Homes program, closed out in June of 2022. They addressed about 315 units, and property values have increased according to some folks I know that do some market value research in the area. So it was a successful program, and we're still seeing the benefits of that today. Here, I have a few pictures of things that went into this whole initiative. So on the top left, you see green streets. They're the permeable pavers with the gravel under. Top right is the Daylit Creek restoration. This picture is between 22nd Street and Romberg. Storm sewer capacity on the bottom left there. Bigger storm sewers being put in on 22nd, and the bottom right is the West 32nd detention basin. One of the impacts that this has, this is going to sort of tie it into the housing market here, is that once we are complete with the full Bee Branch project, it will reduce the number of homes in the special flood hazard areas in the FEMA firms or the flood insurance rate maps. So if you look at the picture that I have up here, this is taken from the FEMA website, and we're looking at the city of Dubuque. And what we're looking at there, you see that blue line, that's called a special flood hazard area. So any homes that are in that area where the blue touches, they're required to have flood insurance. And this is Kaufman Avenue. So you can see that the panel on the left that ends in 0239F, that panel was updated in 2021. The panel on the right, 0243F, that was updated in 2013. So the majority of the flood panels in Dubuque were updated in 2021, with the exception of 5 that touched the flood wall or the levee. And so there's 2 portions of the Bee Branch project that we're still working on getting completed, and that's going to be installing pumping stations and a floodgate. And when those are done, then our flood, what is this? Well, he's also our planning services manager, but he's our floodplain manager as well. His name is Wally Wernemont in the planning department. He'll submit what's called a letter of map revision to get the additional special flood hazard areas off the map. So this is going to be very good in the future, and we see it as being a more equitable housing issue to remove those special flood hazard areas, because what we're looking at, are those areas where there there are more affordable housing prices and folks that could really benefit from not having to carry flood insurance. Moving on to the current programs that we offer through our division, we're going to start with our buying incentives that we run through our community development programs division. So we have multiple funding sources that we use for our buying incentives. We have these first-time home buyer loans, and we offer up to $5,000 loan for down payment closing costs at 0% interest to purchase a home anywhere in the city. And this is using community development block grant funds. And so our CDBG funds have different guidelines than both the Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes program. So they're different from what Angela and Nicole showed you. And they're also different from our IFA Housing Trust Fund income guidelines. So I've got them all listed up here in later slides, and we'll get to those eventually. Another buying incentive that we have is in the Washington neighborhood, and that's the map that you see here. It's not, this map is extended all the way to 32nd Street. So it's not the traditional Washington neighborhood that we think of that ends at 22nd. It's extended all the way out so that we can help more people. So again, they're up to $25,000 loans with 0% interest. And this is determined by income level. So I think it's 25,000 if you're 30% AMI or below. And then incremental, I think it's 20 if you're below 50 and 15,000 if you're below 80 AMI. And these are following the IFA income guidelines, which are more generous than the CDBG income guidelines. We also offer voucher home ownership incentives. So both of the incentives that are listed here are available for housing choice voucher participants. So that's also called Section 8 in the city, if you're not aware. And so often the housing choice voucher is thought of as a rental program, but voucher holders can also purchase a home, and that subsidy that typically goes towards paying a landlord actually helps them pay their mortgage. And so it is exclusively for people who already hold the voucher. We can't have a homeowner that, just happens to qualify for voucher guidelines and wants to buy a home. They have to have a voucher in order to use the voucher to buy a home. All right, now let's look at our homeowner rehab loans. There's different requirements for the different funding sources we use for homeowner rehab. So we do have the IFA Housing Trust Fund dollars, like I was mentioning with the Washington neighborhood stuff before. We also have community development block grant funding for that as well. The environmental review requirements are different for both of these. So the Washington neighborhood areas take significantly less time because we don't have to go through a full historic review and follow all the other federal regulations that we have to with CDBG. One thing to keep in mind that's really important that we reiterate is that our homeowner rehab loans are not to be used for emergency repairs. The processes just take too long. So if there are emergency repairs that need to be made, we typically refer people to our other partnering agencies who may be able to assist. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to assist people who have an immediate roof leak or something like that that needs to be addressed right away. We do have up to $25,000 for home rehabilitation. Again, that's through IFA or CDBG. We offer low to no interest loans, long-term repayment plans for low-mod income homeowners. So depending on the income bracket they fall into, their payment can either be $60 a month, $40 a month, or they can be deferred and due upon sale. Another thing to keep in mind is that the whole house must be code compliant when the project is complete and meet our community development standards. So if somebody just wanted a new roof and they just wanted us to come out, look at the roof and replace the roof, that's great. But we would also have to look through the entire house and make sure that everything in the house is code compliant before we could address that roof. And when I say meet community development standards, this sort of formerly known in our office as the rehab standards. And we think about that as like code +1. So what the code that we enforce and that we use as our minimum standard is the International Property Maintenance Code. So if you're familiar with the rental code or anything like that, it's the same thing. So we started that as our base. And then for like community standards or community development standards, let's say that we go into a house and there's 3-prong receptacles that are ungrounded. To meet IPMC standards, you could switch them back to two-prong perhaps, but what we want to do is move towards a more modern solution. And so we would want them to, those receptacles to be grounded, and it could be done in many ways. You could add a GFCI to the circuit, add a GFI breaker, update the service. We don't say what has to be done, but we do just require that they're brought to a more modern standard, to make sure that the funding is being used in the best way to keep occupants safe. This is a look at our loan criteria. As noted before, again, we have multiple funding sources, so we'll look at what low mod income means shortly when we look at those income guidelines. But in general, all of our loan recipients have to be low mod income, taking into account all of the occupants of the home, all income that's coming in. There are a couple of exceptions. We do require a minimum of a 640 credit score. That's for the middle score. We get the, we run the credit reports for our homeowner repair folks, but we get the credit reports from the lending institution for our first-time home buyers. So whatever the bank is getting, they pass on to us. We also require that the housing ratio is below 33%. So this is all housing related expenses in a month can't be more than 33% of their monthly income. That's for protection of the borrowers, to make sure they're not getting in over their head. We also require that their debt to income ratio is below 43%. So all of their housing expenses plus any other debt that they're paying, like an auto loan, credit card debt, et cetera, that can't exceed 43% of their monthly income. They also need to be able to secure a traditional fixed rate loan. We work with most lenders, but we have to set up new relationships with each new lending institution that we come across. So we work with almost all of the local lenders, but recently we've been getting more of the online mortgage lenders like Movement Mortgage, Rocket Mortgage, and we have to take some time to build the relationship with them and make sure that everything that we do checks out with their processes. So that can sometimes make our process a little longer. And we've also just noticed that the loan origination and underwriting fees are very high with these online places compared to some of the local lenders. So we don't have any policy around disallowing that, but it's just something that we are aware of, and you know, are not sure how much the buyer knows that by using some of these online places, it can increase that for them. We also require that buyers complete a Finally Home course, and I'll talk more about that in the next slide. And then just for general information, we need about 6 weeks from the point that we receive the application from the home buyer to close for our process. And so what we typically do is on the day of closing for the home buyer, we close on our loan with them right before they close on the house. So we give them the check to put towards the down payment at that time.
Hey, Maddie, before you keep going, I have about 3 questions in the chat box I was going to ask you.
Sure.
So someone asked regarding the information on the loans, have those ever been forgivable, or it's always something that the home buyer has to pay back, correct?
Yeah, so ours are not forgivable. The home buyer does have to pay them back. The grant programs that spoke before me, so Nicole and Angela's grants, those are typically forgivable, as well as those BBHH grants that I talked about in the very beginning. So, but the loans that I'm discussing here, they are not forgivable.
Okay. And then also when you were talking about the Section 8 or the housing voucher program, so is that for a situation for them to qualify? Did they have to previously be on the housing voucher program, or do they have to currently be on it? Or what's the process if you do have a buyer that might want to take advantage of that?
Good question. Yes, they have to currently have a voucher. So if I had a voucher and I lived in an apartment and I have been saving saving up, or maybe I was taking part in another savings program that we have through, specifically for voucher holders. And I had, some money saved up for a down payment and my credit was good. I could purchase a house and use my voucher instead of the payment going to the landlord. It will just go straight towards paying my mortgage, but you have to have the voucher in order to qualify for that program.
Okay, thank you. And then next one, do you have any programs that would assist with a broken sewer line to the street?
That's a good question. I know that we maintain some loans in our loan portfolio. We service some loans that are for sewer replacement, but those typically go, I think, through engineering or the water department. I can't remember who. So we are not the original people that you'd want to talk to about that. But I can get more information and send that in an email later with the proper sort of channels to come through for that.
Wonderful. And then last question on here before you can go ahead. What's the status on the Green Alleys project? Do you know anything about that?
I don't. That would be a question for our engineering department.
Engineering. Okay, wonderful. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, no problem. So this is Finally Homes, our home buyer education program that we use. So previously we did a home workshop that was a 4-week in-person workshop that occurred on Monday nights every other month in our department here, but HUD changed its requirements. So any programs that HUD had that required housing counseling, which is what our home workshop was considered, that they now have to be taught by a HUD certified financial counselor, financial housing counselor. So we pivoted to this Finally Home curriculum that's all online. It's self-paced and it takes about 8 hours to complete. And it's free for participants that are below 80% AMI. And that's self-identified on the honor system. So if someone clicks in and says, yeah, I'm below 80 AMI, then they get to take the class for free. And I have the live link to the registration here on the slide. All right, so these are our CDBG income limits. So this would be for that $5,000 down payment available anywhere in the city, as well as the CDBG homeowner rehabilitation loans of up to $25,000. Again, that's anywhere in the city. So these guidelines are updated annually. As you see, these ones were updated in June of 2022. Because of some issues with the census data this year on the federal level, they won't be releasing the 2023 income limits until a little later, potentially August of this year. And that's going to impact our IFA income limits as well, which are here. So as you can see, the IFA income limits are quite a bit different from our CDBG income limits. And these limits would be for the Washington neighborhood programs. And we can also use these IFA income limits or IFA funds for home buyers that fall below the 30% median income anywhere in the city. And now, how I said I was going to kind of give that bigger overview of some of the other things that we do in the community. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the community development block grant, because we do so much more with that than just the homeowner rehab and first-time home buyer stuff. So CDBG is a very versatile funding source, and we are an entitlement community. So what that means is that because of our population, we get around $1 million a year from the federal government to put towards one of 3 national objectives. And the 3 national objectives are in that little orange box on your left. So benefiting low mod income persons, eliminating slum and blight, not slime. Although I wish that it would eliminate slime from my children, and then meet an urgent need. And so what we do, I think, currently and historically, is most of this funding goes towards the benefit of low to mod income people. Eliminating slum and blight is not one that we can easily do here in Dubuque because we don't have any designated areas of slum. And then meeting an urgent need would be something like if there was a hurricane, but it has to be a federally declared disaster basically to have it be considered an urgent need. So we do, like I mentioned before, provide those loans for home buyers and homeowners. We can also do purchase, rehab, resale. And so this would be where, exactly as it sounds, we purchase a home, we rehab it, and then we resell it. There are a lot of regulatory guidelines around this, so it's less common for us to do this at this very point in time. And then some of the other things we do under suitable living environments are recreation activities. So we provide scholarships and free activities for kids to participate in city rec things. We can also do infrastructure improvements. We've done a lot of street overlays, sidewalk improvements, things like that. And we also provide nonprofit support, so purchase of service type things to help expand programming or create new programming for nonprofits. And then we also funnel a lot of funding to support micro enterprises, which have a very specific definition by HUD, which is a business that employs 5 or fewer people, with one of those people being the owner of the business. Another thing I just wanted to touch on was an urban ag grant that we just recently got from the USDA. We're still sort of in negotiations with it, but we're going to be working in the census tracts that are low mod income housing that are also considered food deserts, to increase access to healthy food options and increase educational opportunities for kids around urban ag and local foods. So we're really looking forward to partnering with some local businesses and nonprofits to put this together. And we're going to focus on hydroponics and vertical growing. So that's exciting. This is some boring government stuff, but I like to make sure that everybody knows, because it's something that is important to our community and we need help advocating for. So in January of 2021, the Office of Management and Budget on the federal level proposed doubling the definition of a metropolitan statistical area from 50,000 to 100,000 or 100,000 people, excuse me. And so what this means, as I mentioned before, that we are an entitlement city for the Community Development Block Grant. We don't have 100,000 people in our city. So you have to be a metropolitan statistical area or an MSA to be an entitlement city for that. So to get entitlement CDBG, you have to be an MSA. We currently are. We would not be if they doubled it. And so that also impacts the grants that Angela and Nicole were talking about. So for example, the lead grant requires a match, and we use CDBG as that match funding. So if we were not the entitlement city, we didn't get the CDBG, we couldn't use that CDBG as match funding for those grants to bring that money into our community. So the next point there would mean that Dubuque would go from a metropolitan statistical area to being micropolitan. So the OMB backed off this time, but they intend to review the definition again in 2030 with that census. So it's important. If you hear chatter around it, I would encourage advocacy around keeping MSA at 50,000. Another program that we offer is urban revitalization, and this is property tax exemption benefits. So it's based on improvements to the structure within the calendar year, and applications are due every year by February 1st. It is a hard deadline. I can't accept any applications after February 1st because that's what's written into our plan. So the urban revite area is that green area that you see there that's kind of got funny lines drawn all around it. So any improvements that increase the assessed valuation of a residential property increase the valuation by 10% of a residential property, you could be eligible for 10 years of tax exemption on the increased valuation. And then for commercial properties, it's the improvement has to be 15% and the exemption is only for 3 years. So I've got a live link in there to Urban Revite information and resources. The application is only 1 page. It's pretty painless. And so we verify that any permitted work was done under permit. And then that those permits have been finalized, and that the valuation would increase by 10%. So then we put those through city council and they go to the city assessor from there, and they apply the exemption. The last thing I think I want to talk about is housing creation. So I mentioned before our purchase, rehab, resale. We do get a handful of properties every year through the petition for title process. And both of the properties that you see on this screen are properties that we got through that way. So we typically assess them when we get them, decide if we can rehab them or put them out for RFP. And that way we can sort of try to keep the, I don't want to say keep control of what happens, but we want to make sure that, you know, the integrity of the structure in the neighborhood is going to be kept while there's, you know, and it still benefits the private investor as well. We also work with partners for affordable housing creation. So Affordable Housing Network, Inc. Is who we most commonly work with. They actually took this house on the left. This was 1293 Walnut. They did a huge rehab to it, and we just recently sold it. It looks a lot better. I should put an updated picture on here of the after of it. And then we have a handful of vacant city-owned lots. We can do infill work there. We can, you know, we've got multiple plans for multiple city lots that we can work on creating more affordable housing. Here are some helpful links that will be live when I send out a copy of this to Melissa and she passes it on to all of you. And then this is my contact information, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any new questions on the chat box. So that's different, or I have a new one. No, never mind. That was a thank you. But anyways, I had quite a few requests for your guys' PowerPoints, especially with the information regarding like the income guidelines. So if we could make sure to get those sent to me, and then I'll forward it out to everyone that has attended the class today. But I'm getting a lot of thank yous. This is a lot of great information. So we really appreciate you ladies coming and taking an hour of your afternoon and explaining some of these programs. It was great information. And then I also want to say thank you to Kelly Davis. She did a lot of work behind the scenes to get everything organized and set up and approved for CE credit. So for everyone that is on here, just so you know, I will have your CE certificates available in the Google Drive next week. I will send an email out to everyone when they are available for download. Also, I do have quite a few CE classes coming up in the next month or two. A special note, on March 27th, Iowa Association of Realtors new attorney, Matt Blake, is going to come to Dubuque and do an hour-long legal update with you guys. So please make sure to take advantage of that CE class, especially to be able to meet Matt and to ask him questions. He's going to cover some of the new advertising laws on Teams, and then also the DeSouza Iowa Realty case and the liability that listing agents are taking on and how to prevent that. So anyways, if you guys have any questions, please reach out, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon.